basta, no?
Call this regular meeting to order. We have 6 trustees present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start with the superintendent's report.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you all very much. Just one thing from Superintendent. As you know, the board approved earlier this year a team of teachers to go to the ISD based on the ISD challenge, which is professional development opportunity, having schools submit problems of practice that they wanted to solve, and so we went. I think we were the largest delegation. So just to put it in perspective, there were 25,000 people at this conference. It was a worldwide conference, and we had the largest representation of staff members, some of whom are sitting there. So just some comments. I thought you as a board sometimes want to hear some positive comments about the things that you implement. This from a veteran high school teacher, been a high school teacher for about 16 years, also a coach at the high school. Just wanted to thank you all for giving us this incredible opportunity of attending ISD. It was the best experience I have had as an educator. Thank you all very much for supporting us in our endeavors. I look forward to becoming Apple certified and Microsoft certified, which, if you know, those are really hard to do. From the Bowie team, the Bowie team would like to express our gratitude for the opportunity to attend ISD, just another testament to the support we receive from our board and from district administration. From one of the elementary school teachers at Mendez, thank you for the wonderful opportunity. We look forward to implementing what we learned to help benefit our students. And from another Mendez teacher, thank you for the wonderful and mind-blowing ISD experience. Mendez will be so enriched with all the new knowledge. This experience will help us improve teacher growth and student learning. So just thank you. I know on behalf of the staff, they appreciate it. I think it was some really good sessions and just opened our eyes to what is the possibilities. That's it, Madam President.
We'll move on to the public forum. I want to remind those that speak that citizens are offered an opportunity to address the board without prior approval. Presentations shall be informative only. Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. The board requests that presentations not include statements that may be considered defamatory. Presenters should conduct themselves with common courtesy and in a respectful manner. In accordance with state law and district policy, disruptive conduct must be avoided so as not to interfere with the meeting. If a presentation includes a complaint against an employee of the district, proper channels set out in the district policy to seek resolution before bringing the matter to the board should be exhausted. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. If, after at least 1 warning from the presiding officer, any person who continues to disrupt the meeting by his or her words or actions, the presiding officer shall request assistance from law enforcement officials to have the person removed from the meeting. Our first speaker is Esther Garcia.
Can you hear me? Hello, my name is Esther Garcia, and I am a lifetime resident of San Marcos. My cousin Roland Salcedo and I are wondering why Trustee Miguel Arredondo would push for the sale of the agenda item number 8D, when a few months ago he recused himself from voting on the new central office location due to his family owning property in the Sunset Acres. His family owns property at 406 and 408 McKee Street, which is only 2 houses over from the proposed property sale, which we feel constitutes a conflict of interest and has me questioning his motive or special interest, especially since he announced his candidacy for the city council. We ask that you all exercise caution in moving forward with this sale when you vote on it. Please consider the residents in Central with whom you have a 25-year lease and the effects it could pose on the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cantu, as a matter of fact, because I am allowed to respond with factual information, my intent for putting this agenda item on tonight's agenda was never to sell the property. So as people are watching in the gallery and in the audience, that was never my intent. So that was false, first and foremost. The second thing is for us to discuss the future of that property and the district's fiduciary responsibility to maintain that site if we have no intention of selling it in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Arredondo. Second speaker, Linda Kelsey Jones.
Hello, I'm Linda Kelsey Jones, and I'm on the board of the Central, but I am speaking as an individual. And also, I am the director of Art Space, which is currently housed at the Central in the portables behind the building. And I want to say the most important things first, because I could probably talk a long time and wander in lots of directions, because I've been here for a long time working on arts and culture. And one of the first things I want to say is that I'm so grateful to the board and the superintendent for having, first off, said yes to our fearless leader, Mrs. Philo, when asking about being able to use Bonham School for the Centro Cultural. It was a dream of 30 years that have been being worked on by many people, but with her constant perseverance. And secondly, for gratitude for the 25-year lease that has now made it possible for the Central to go forward with larger grants to make more things happen. In bringing up Mrs. Philo, of course, you know that we have lost her within the last 6 months, and that's been, of course, required a lot of adjustment and regrouping. But in regrouping, we also know that the dream that she had is one that we've shared with her. I've been on the board of Central since the very first board before we had a building. I was asked, and I always laugh at this, because at that time, if somebody said art, they said, well, get Linda Kelsey Jones to do it, even if it was a poster. So Mrs. Philo reached out and asked me to be on the board, and I was grateful to be asked, because it was exciting to me. I've always been interested in all cultures and all arts. I also was concerned and had already made some start. My daughter at that time, we moved here and her father had passed away. There was no art in the schools, in the elementary schools, and she was had a really rough year. So I went to some board meetings, school board meetings, and tried to find out how to get art in the schools. We've made a lot of progress in that direction, and I'm very grateful for that as well. The first art space was started in 1995 at Southside, and it finally found what I like to think of as a forever home at the Central. Before I run out of time, I want to say the last things first, so don't forget, they don't get lost. I'm here to speak to the possible sale of both portables and the property. And I hear that Miguel saying that that's not the purpose of the meeting. But I feel I want to express that, whoops, see what happens, that we have a chance to get our financial ducks in a row, because the dream of Mrs. Philo and the board was to have a really good, big-sized cultural center on that property. We don't want to end up like a little flowering bush in a tiny pot with a big building behind us or apartments. We want to fulfill the original dream, which was to create an environment that could house all the programs that we have already built, have started to build. I know my time's up, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Third speaker, David Montelongo.
My name is David Montelongo. I live at 320 Patricia Drive, and we also have a property at 521 Mackey Street. My concern here today, and I've been concerned ever since the topic came up about redoing the administration building. Back in 2013, 2014, an $80,000 bond was passed, and $3.5 million was for the administration building. Now, if I'm wrong, I would like to be corrected on that. But the thing about it that I'm concerned about is in the new facilities that are being new administration building, is that money that was allocated for the building that was there, is that going to be applied to the new building, or is it gone somewhere else? That's my question, because the taxpayers approved for that facility only. Now, the other thing is, like everything else, when it comes to doing something different, the thing about it is when vacation of that property, my deal is, I wish the board and the administration would think about it real seriously, because the only persons that are going to come and buy that property are developers, and developers are going to do one thing. They're going to put apartments in there. We already have enough going up. We have the one on Cheatham Street, and there's another one coming up on Tuttle's, where Tuttle's Lumber Company was. So it's already saturated in that facilities where traffic is going to be so horrendous that it's going to create a problem. And if this property is sold, then you're going to have more problems in the south side. And we don't need that. And I would really would like for the council or the board to think about it and keep that property, because you sell it now, you're going to need some more property later on, then you're going to buy it at a higher price. So actually, you're defeating, to me, defeating the purpose of what we need to do. We've already passed 2 bonds in 14 and in 17 that total $180 million. So that's a lot of money that the taxpayers have had to dish out or going to dish out, and we can't afford it anymore. Not from the city. The city passed a big bond, the county, and the school board. And this is why I'm here today, because I would like for you all to think about what I'm talking about, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You want me to? Mr. Montelongo, the 2013-2014 bond, that $3.5 million, it was voted down by the taxpayers. So that there was no $3.5 million in 2013-2014, correct?
No money approved for central administration.
It was not approved in 2013-14. No, sir. No, sir.
Thank you for responding. We can continue with our academic.
Can you just give it to me so I can see what he said? And then I can.
Sure.
Can you make a copy of that, Georgia? Can you just make a copy of this? What, make a copy? Yeah.
It was on the bond, but it was not approved.
Yeah, it was not approved.
The other stuff
Vote it down.
passed.
The other stuff passed, but not that.
They were able,
You want us to give a copy of this? so
could
we can-
vote on
We'll give you a
certain
copy back
things.
here.
It was kind of like a menu.
Read those comments.
We can proceed. Academic update, A to F presentation by D. Carney from Mo Casey and Associates.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. I'm Monica Ruiz-Mills, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Assessments. I was going to say assessments. And I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Dee Carney from Oak Casey and Associates, and she will be doing our A through F presentation.
Good evening, Madam President, board members. Thank you for the opportunity. Just to give you a brief 15-minute, if that's possible, overview on the A through F accountability system. And thank you, Laura, for getting that up. Appreciate it. should have a handout. Yes, thank you. Perfect, perfect. So what we know now, here we go. In 1986, we started in the state of Texas with TABS, Texas Assessment of Basic Skills, and then we moved to TEAMS, we moved to TOS, we moved to TAX, and in 2012, the State Accountability System became STAR. But for the first time in a month, on August 15th, and the first time, we will have A through F ratings for accountability. That's what we'll look at. It's quite a bit different than all the other systems that we have been under. In 2017, let's connect it to what we know right now. So in 2017, almost all the districts in the state, everything that's green, right, met standard. Their label for the district was met standard. There's about 44 districts that were rated IR. Come August 15th, we'll have A through F ratings for every district. It will look quite a bit different. This is just an example. We don't have all the data yet to where we can calculate it, but again, the agency will release that on August 15th. From a campus perspective, right now in 2017, nearly every campus met standard. About 90% of 8,800 campuses met standard. The campuses that tend to get a lot of attention are the 358 improvement required campuses. And that's currently, right now, 358 improvement required campuses. And you can see there's 224 elementary, 66 middle schools, 43 high schools, and 25 K through 12 campuses. But in February, TEA ran their model, right? They modeled the data, and the agency has said for 2018, in a month or so, they believe about 1,700 campuses will be rated a D or an F. Currently, we have 358. The agency is predicting almost 1,800 campuses will be rated D or F in this new system. That's a significant shift in the way we rate our campuses. Here's, again, this is TEA's example of their model. They're predicting about 538 campuses overall will be rated F, and those are TEA's predictions of how they'll break out. And you know every model is wrong, right? Every model is, you just have to decide how much wrongness you will accept in the model, but this is TEA's model. And then 1,200 D campuses. So the accountability system that you've become comfortable with since 2012 when STAR came into play is gone. You were comfortable with the indexes, you understood how you got your rating, but with House Bill 22, when it passed at the end of the 85th legislative session, it eliminated the index system and moved into, right, the A through F system. So the commissioners required to build a system that will rate each campus and district with a letter grade of A through F. And what did those letter grades mean? Well, for those of you who've been here since the tax system, they're going to look really familiar. And A stands for exemplary, B recognized, C acceptable, D in need of improvement, that's a new label, and then F unacceptable performance. On August 15th, the districts will receive an A through F rating for each domain and an overall letter grade. Campuses will receive a Met Standard or IR rating for each domain and overall. Notice these are TEA slides, right? That's got TEA's logo, so I'm pulling them from TEA's data set. What they did not include is in statute, the commissioner must also release another what-if report. Remember when he did that before, right before the 85th legislative session, he gave us those what-if grades? He has to do that again. So campuses will receive a MET or an IR, but then coming right behind it will be a what-if report to show what if they had put in A through F letter grades, what it would look like for each domain and overall. So here's Similar, we've got 3 domains now. You're used to 4 indexes, but now it's 3 domains: student achievement, school progress, and closing the gaps. So on August 15th, the district will receive an A through F letter grade for each domain and then an overall rating. Campuses will receive MET and IR for each domain and then an overall rating. To calculate that, we're not going to get real technical, but it's important to note that there still remains in the school progress a better of Part A or Part B, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then overall, there is some weighting that has to happen, right? In statute, the agency will pick the better of the student achievement or school progress letter grade. That weights 70%, and then 30% comes from closing the gaps. So really quickly, let's talk about the student achievement domain. This is what the commissioner calls the performance domain, and this is what it looks like. For an elementary school, 100% of the weight of the student achievement domain is based on STAR. But it's STAR not only at the passing level, which we're used to from tabs, teams, TOS, TACS. It's at approaches, meets, and master's grade level. It's a combination of those. So elementary and middle school, 100% of the weight, 100% of the grade, 100% of the rating will come from STAR. From high schools, it's a combination of 3 things. You have STAR weighted at 40%, college, career, and military readiness indicators at 40%, and graduation rates are weighted at 20%. And please note, you're used to understanding about lagging indicators. This particular one for CCMRs and graduation rates come from the class of 2017. So when you take that timeline and you look, okay, you had your class of 2017 and they walked across the stage, right? But then the 85th legislative session came in and changed the accountability system. Because the class of 2017 was under the old index system, right? So some of these lagging indicators are playing havoc with some of the results that we will see statewide, especially in the CCMR categories. Here are those CCMR categories. If you're not familiar with those, they're new as well. You have the college-ready categories, and you can see it's meeting the criteria on AP or IB exams. Previously, under the index system, it was participation. Now we're talking about the shift has gone to meeting the criteria of 3 or 4. You've got a TSI criteria, completing dual credit courses, earning an associate's degree. Coming and will be added into the system is completing the on-ramps course, and then also meeting some indicators on college readiness. Under career ready, one that's caused a lot of discussion since last summer is this idea of an industry-based certification. It has changed, it has morphed. What the commissioner put on his original list, that industry certification list does not seem to meet the needs of every community. So I know superintendents are still trying to get certifications added onto that list. The CTE coherent sequence of coursework, again, our students taking courses that are aligned to this new industry-based certification. And then military ready, did they enlist? But we can also, the agency's giving us some leeway on how we look at that, because the Department of Defense will not give you their records. That's not publicly available. So the high schools have to get that information in some other ways that the agency says they can do that. In the second domain, the school progress domain, it's actually our favorite domain. It's where schools and teachers and students earn credit for making progress, right? That's something we didn't have under tabs, teams, TOS, and TACS, but we do under STAR. There's 2 pieces to that: academic growth, which looks at student growth, and relative performance, which looks at school performance or school progress. Just really quickly, under academic growth, it's actually looking at grade to grade. Did that student move what we call proficiency levels? If they walked into my classroom, and I taught middle school math forever, so if they walked into my classroom at approaches grade level, did I move those students to meets grade level? If I did, then there's some points that are awarded. And oh, by the way, it's really, really best for kids to keep moving, right? To keep moving. And if those students walked into my classroom at meets grade level, did I move them to master's grade level? And really, really importantly, if they walked into my room at master's grade level, do I keep them at that grade level? That's how this system of points works for student growth. Under measuring school progress, it looks like this. They look at the percentage of economically disadvantaged students that are enrolled on a campus, right? That becomes one of your axes. And then the other axis is your Domain 1 score, your STAR and CCMRs. And basically, it's taking into account poverty and how poverty impacts performance. It's a regression model that TEA runs. And how it works is you can see if you're a low poverty campus, this is TEA's example of an elementary campus. If there's 0 economically disadvantaged students enrolled at your campus, to earn an A in this school progress domain, you'd have to earn an 86. But if you have a 100% of economically disadvantaged students enrolled at your campus, an A would be 53 or above. So the cut scores, if you will, the cut scores are determined by the percent of economically disadvantaged students enrolled. It's giving some weight and acknowledging that some of the educational difficulties our campuses have are based on the needs the students come to the school with. And then that's where we talk about the agency will take the higher scaled score of Part A or Part B, recognizing you may have student growth that's higher or school progress that's higher. The third domain is the closing the gaps domain, and this is where the state and federal accountability systems are aligned. The commissioner has been very intentional in his efforts to align state and federal accountability, and those of you who lived under the AYP system and had a campus that was recognized, but you missed AYP and you had to try to explain that to parents, it was very, very difficult. So he's been very intentional in aligning state and federal accountability, and that's where it comes. It comes within the closing the gaps domain. You see lots of student groups. Lots of student groups. And the last 3 bullets at the bottom are kind of new student groups, current, but including former special ed, current and monitored English learners, and then continuously enrolled and not continuously enrolled. And then the components of the closing the gap system are on the right. You'll see academic achievement in reading and math. Notice it's at meets grade level, and that's on STAR. Growth in reading and math, again, another slice of STAR. For high schools and districts, graduation rates and CCMRs. The student achievement domain, STAR, again, and then everyone will be evaluated on English language proficiency status, and that's TELPAS. Lots of student groups, a lot of components, but again, it's where state and federal accountability are aligned. When you look at the next page, this is the actual targets. That's in the accountability manual. There's a lot of targets. And you'll notice that each student group has a different target. Now, what the commissioner has told us is that he wants to hold these targets in place for 5 years, instead of what we've been under with the targets changing each year. He wants to hold these targets in place for 5 years, and we welcome that consistency. But for large, diverse campuses, that's a lot of targets to meet. We did the math for you. If you're a large, diverse elementary or middle school, there's about 72 targets to meet. If you're a large and diverse district or high school, you have about 56 targets to meet. There is no adjustment here for a campus that needs to meet 72 targets versus a campus that needs to meet 22 targets. The grades will be based on, does the student group meet the achievement target? So the closing the gaps domain here takes on a little different meaning than what we've lived under with tabs, teams, TOS, and TACs, and STAR up to this point. Most people think of closing the gaps as comparing one student group to another student group, right? But in this domain, it's comparing the student group to the target. So it's closing the gaps to the target. Again, just reminding you of what's getting ready to come on August 15th and how that's calculated. And I know your team, Laura and Monica, can go into the weeds as much as you want them to explain that. And just closing with one of our favorite quotes from Pedro Noguera. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to take those. Otherwise, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. I think just one. On career readiness, one of the ways the student could demonstrate this on the slide, on your 10th slide, was
Yes, sir.
earn industry-based certification. Is that only on the approved list from the commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the percent of targets met, does that control for, among those 72 different targets, areas where you might just have a very low number of students, like 1 or 2 or 3?
It will. There's a minimum size criteria that TEA applies. Typically, it'll be 25 students
Okay.
or more for a student group to count. Great question. That's why some campuses have to, large, diverse campuses will have 72 targets to meet because, you know, they have enough kids to count in every category. And others might only have 22 targets to meet because they don't have all the diverse student groups.
Okay, thank you.
Great question.
Ms. Costilla?
I just have a question for maybe Ms. Reese or the superintendent. When we get the information in August, or this information comes out to all the campuses, are we going to have a discussion on this, whatever results we get, on either August or September's agenda?
Yes, when Ms. Reeves Mills presents like she did last year,
Uh-huh.
yes, she will do an academic update based on our data and our scores.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
It'll lead to a lot of discussion.
It's what?
It's going to lead to a lot of discussion.
Oh,
I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Any other
Yes.
questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee.
Ready for the construction update, Coleman Uresti?
Good evening. My name is Coleman Uresti. I'm with Perkins & Will architecture firm that's assisting with the bond. And I'm here to give the monthly update this week. Pretty quick, pretty straightforward this month. We're making a lot of progress. A lot of projects have started into construction. And then really we're heavy into design on quite a few of the projects. So just want to talk about overall schedule like I always do. The high school really is the one that we're moving into right now, hot and heavy. We have a permit or a site permit for us. So really that's really staying on schedule. We're waiting for our building permit, but at least we can start construction once those contracts start. And then the other schedule item is rain. It's rained out there, and so there's a lot of catch up from some of the construction that's happening. All the pictures you get to see were before the big heavy rains, so lucky you don't get to see the lakes. So just wanted to give you an update on that and how that affects schedule. At transportation, things are going relatively smooth. Again, I think the biggest thing is rain for them right now. They were stopped for a little bit. They were trying to get some walls and those things up, and they couldn't do that until they could have a dry site to build scaffolding, to put CMU up. So I think next month we'll know a little bit more on schedule for that one. But right now, rain is really their biggest thing. The good thing is they've gotten most of the parking lot in already, so they're able to have dry spaces now. So it shouldn't affect as you further get dried in on that side. And you can kind of see here from the pictures that walls are starting to go up. So this is the fun part. Everybody can drive by and actually see something. You're like, it's just more dirt usually. So we're able to see what's going on. Once block starts going up, it goes really fast. The good thing about this project, it's very straightforward construction. All CMU block. You know, you can see the conduits coming out of the top of the walls, so they're dropping all that in there to hide all the electrical and those types of things. Once all that's in, they start working around the building and going pretty quickly. So that is a blessing that we are with CMU there. Just another kind of view of the site, just kind of telling you what's going on, just to give you a better scale of the amount of work that's happening. And this was from last week, so you can actually see a lot more going on out there today. With Hernandez, we have gotten all the shop drawings in. We actually just returned 4 of them yesterday, or I'm sorry, this morning. And so they're really starting to ordering all that material. We have a good phasing plan. Jay coordinated a meeting to talk about construction, where they're going to lay out certain materials on site to make sure that we're separated from kids, so they're not walking through areas when they come back. So making a lot of progress on that one, from a lot of paperwork and all those necessary things before they can actually get all the materials and bring it out. So that should be starting in the next 2 weeks from a construction standpoint. And then Miller, we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit in more detail. Man, thank you for coming back, you know, a couple of times during the summer and meeting with us. We are trying to make progress, keep up with schedules. Really, I don't know who's excited, you guys or us, about teachers coming back, because we really want to meet with them and talk to them and understand some of the spaces that they're in. So that's one of our next things that are coming up. As soon as we can get staff to come in, we want to talk to each department. Talk to fine arts, talk to science, you know, talk to the counselors and administration and those types of spaces that we're touching, so that we make sure this is the type of space they need. This is how it's supposed to be laid out. Do I need to have my counselors next to other spaces? You know, we really want to know those ins and outs. And from administration or campus administration, we've really gotten really good direction. And I thank you again. And then at the elementary school, we're under construction. The groundbreaking has been rescheduled for July 23rd due to rain. But you can kind of see on these next couple shots, they've had to get started to keep up with our schedules. This is the day before the rain. So you see that little white line that's running along. You know, you can see the dark dirt and the light dirt. I'd say you can't see half of the light dirt due to the rain. It's a lot of rain, and this is it's called a fat clay. So this clay likes to fill up with water, and it just loves to hold it in. So this is good for ponds. And so what they're doing is they've gotten their pumps out there. They're starting to dry it out, and they're able to make a lot of progress doing that from that standpoint. So they're starting to go now again, and they're really good at keeping us up to date on schedule, on rain days, on weather days, and those types of things. So really good progress in communications with that contractor out there. Just another view of that area. So this is that lower area, kind of like that half basement looking in our typical view that we like to show, this little view right here. So you can see the courtyard be right in here, and this will be the building around there. So they're taking all that dirt out. They're taking that dirt that likes to swell and move. They take that out and they put a dirt that's very stable and it doesn't move, and you put your slab on top of that so it's not moving and heaving. So they'll fill that hole back up with good dirt. And then the high school, we were here last month. We have approval to move forward with Weber Construction. We do have, I said earlier, we do have a site permit. So once we have the contract negotiations worked through, they should be able to start moving on that. We've already had 2 meetings with them to talk about initial phasing. They're going to take a look and dive in a little bit deeper on the phasing. Then we're going to come back and talk to Dr. Turnbow and CJ and those guys to really dive into the details of where kids are going to be able to walk, you know, since this area is going to be under construction. They're going to really get into the details of that to make sure we have safety for our kids. And then wanted to give you an update on the elementary schools. Now that our principals are back here today, thank you for coming back. We are going to set up a meeting. We're setting up a meeting to meet with each individual campus to talk about some of those options of how do we want to approach the libraries, where do we want to do those additions, how do we rearrange some of these interior spaces for flex spaces. And we have some really good options. but we need to hear from them because they're the ones that use the space. They know that building better than us. So we don't want to move important rooms if that doesn't make sense. So we'll be able to come back. I know on this schedule we said we were going to come back this month, but we're going to come back next month once we get some more answers from on-campus staff. I didn't want to come in here with something that we made up without any input, so we'll be back next month to talk about that. And that's all I have for the update. Do you have any questions?
Questions, anybody?
The elementary school is still on track to open in July or August?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'll let us know if that changes, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Let's do a lot of praying that we don't have bad weather, so we can make sure we open in
we don't
July
have a lot of
29th.
rain.
Yeah.
The rain really slows them down.
Oh, look who's back.
Sorry?
Where's the other one?
And as promised, we're going to give our quick update for schematic design for the Miller Middle School. This is Ellen Sadoff. She's from our office, and so she's the project architect on this project. She really knows the ins and outs. She's the one that's going to be doing the details. She's figuring out the design options, working with our lead designers in Chicago and in Dallas. So we have a lot of people on this project, a lot of input, and she gets to deal with all that great input sometimes. And so, so she's trying to balance that side as well as the owner needs as well. And I think, man, she's done a great job of coordinating and coming up with a great solution, and really excited for her to be able to present that in just a moment. I just want to kind of recap. We've been in a couple of times to talk about process and that and schedule. And really, this is just kind of a recap of that book that I gave you. Every month we kind of come in and said, hey, we're talking about programming and those types of things. So just quick recap on that. Right now, right on schedule, really excited to be able to make that progress. And again, if we couldn't meet during the summer, we wouldn't have been able to make that progress. So we're starting to get that information. Once we meet with you guys and get approval, we want to go and meet with the city as soon as we possibly can so we can start that permitting process, start talking about some of that stuff. And then we plan to go out to bid in February. There's a couple of reasons that we want to go out in February. One is the contractor, CM at Risk, Cadence McShane, can start ordering materials and they can be on site. So you start getting in, you start demoing, you start doing that stuff in the existing portions of the building. You get all that rough grading out in front of the building. We do some of that hard work while the kids aren't there. And when the kids are back, then we create those safe zones for the travel. Probably have to talk about new entries and those kinds of things. So we set up the bidding time early so they have time to get shop drawings and materials on site. And then once summer happens, they just get in the next day and start tearing stuff out and putting it back in. I've come in, talked about the visioning. We've talked, so this is that big picture. What does the culture of this school want to be? What do we want that environment to be? We've talked about, we want it to be open. We want it to be inspiring, engaging. And so we get a lot of that information. We take that and we actually put it up on our walls. And as in the office, and as we start to develop, as we start to develop that design, we make sure that we attach these goals towards that design. You can see we met with a great group of people. We talked about different items to make sure taking those words and turning it into a building. And I brought that up a couple of times. And then we start diving into the details of that programming. They're telling us how big the classrooms need to be, what size the science labs, what happens in those science labs so that we're making sure we size this appropriately. And as I've talked about, programming also tells us early on if we're going to hit our budget, right? We knew we needed to be at a certain budget. I convert square footage to budget and money, and that tells us if we're on track. So for example, we were planning during the bond to have about 40,000 square feet of new additions for this so we can expand our capacity to over 1,000 kids. And right now our program's right on. So there's no additional wishing. It's all need for this campus, and you're going to be able to see that in the floor plan here in just a moment. And then we take that program and we start to put it into diagrams. And these are big picture diagrams. It's saying, is our relationship for our admin need to be closer to the library? Does our library need to be the front so community can access it easier? You know, we start talking about that, and we have a couple different options. Do we departmentalize? Do we not? And then we come back to curriculum and the principal, and we really talk about those details. And that starts to let us get into the development of the site plan. And once we have, or I'm sorry, the floor plan. And once we have a floor plan, then we can start playing with the fun stuff, the exterior of the building. What does it look like? What could it look like? And we probably have 25 different options that didn't cut it, honestly. And then we come back and we say, and then administration's like, no way, that's terrible looking. It looks like an aircraft hangar, or, you know, so we come back and we meet and we talk about it, and then we refine it as we go. And you can kind of see we're starting to build walls and boxes. We went from bubbles to more boxes as we refine our design. I've talked about the program before, so I'm going to kind of skip over that portion, but I think the important slide for this is the last page, and it's telling me that, you know, we have about 39,800 square foot of proposed additions that we're going to be able to do at this campus, and so that's including walls and circulation and all those things that, you know, not just classroom spaces and offices. So we took this information, we took the information that Ellen's come up with the elevations, the materials, the narratives that the consultants have done to say this is the type of structural system, this is the type of mechanical system, and we give this to Cadence McShane, and they give us a proposed estimate of cost. And we should be able to receive that here probably early this week, maybe late next week, late this week or early next week. So once we get that information, we'll make sure we update you guys from that standpoint. And then not only the building, we're really taking a look at the best way for site circulation to happen. Right now you have a fire lane that was added in the last bond here. You have your parent drop. You have your bus loop off the back here. And so we were trying to just see if there's a way to help give circulation, or, you know, separate some of that site circulation. Due to the location of where the building is and due to the location of where that parking lot is, we're really locked in. We tried to come up with a couple of options. We're coming in here and looping around so we get more on-site stack. In this option, you know, trying a different way, but we lose so much parking. We lose almost 50% of our parking. And on a site like this, when you have night events and you don't have a neighborhood to park in, you can't afford to lose any of that parking. So I think as we start to develop this a little bit more, we're going to try to take a couple more looks, but I think the best solution without losing parking is really use the current circulation that you have. But we want to dive into that a little bit deeper with the campus staff as well. And then that's that conceptual development. So it's right before we get into schematic, we're starting to talk about those needs a little bit more. And then we start to dive in a little bit deeper. You know, you saw those long elevations, and so earlier, and there are boxes and those things. So we start to develop that, and you can kind of see are we going down the right path? We try to kind of think outside the box, and then you can kind of see, okay, let's refine it back. Let's think about some code issues. Let's think about city ordinances, and so we start to refine off of that model there. Now I'm going to let Ellen take over for this portion.
Thank you. So my name's Ellen Sadoff. Like Coleman said, I am with Perkins & Will Architects. So this has been a really fun project. I think it's really headed in an exciting direction. For the site layout that you can see in front of you, one of the big things that we gathered from our visioning with the campus and with the instructors was this idea of creating a really exciting, inviting space, not only for students when they come to school, but also for community members and for parents, so that there's really that involvement from the entire community at Miller. And I think that's a really exciting idea to kind of run with in terms of our design. So that's sort of helped lay out the way that we're looking at this site. So at the front of the building, we're creating a community courtyard, and that just means that we're looking at ways that we can make a really inviting front porch feel for the campus that's right in front of the library space. Sorry?
On the screen, where is that?
Where's the little pointy? So if you're looking right here, where that says community courtyard, that's going to be the new front entry of the building and also the media center and library area. So that's going to be a really open space. You're going to kind of be able to see through the whole library space into a central campus courtyard. And if you've been to Miller, you know that there is a campus courtyard right now outside of the cafeteria. But one of the things that we heard from instructors is that it's not really being used to its full potential, and that if it was designed and had more shading and nice furniture for outdoor learning, that could be a much more exciting and well-used space for the campus. So that's what the whole plan kind of organizes itself around, is this idea of a central learning courtyard in the middle, a community courtyard in the front that's really open to that library space, so community feels really welcome and invited in. And then on the back, we actually are looking at over here, we're looking at a sensory garden for some of the special education spaces. So that would allow students to get outside and have a little bit more of a quiet courtyard experience. That's a little bit more catered for that student population. That's going to be right at that end of the corridor down here. So overall, that's kind of this unifying element that we're using to organize the campus design. We're also looking at the athletics addition, which is down here at the left-hand side. I'm not sure if Coleman touched on this, but during the programming and the bond planning, we didn't have funds allocated for athletics specifically. That was something that's come up during our visioning and talking with the campus about the need for athletics. So while it's not something that was explicitly called out in the bond, we do want to show an option to solve that problem. But what we need to do for that is to bid it as an alternate, which means that we'll get a separate price for that section of work, and then we'll be able to look at whether we can afford that when the bid comes back with the funds available. So I just want to be clear that that's not something that was originally passed in the bond, which was more focused on increasing capacity and increasing the performing arts and library spaces and science. But that's something that's come up that we're going to be looking at as well. So this is a little diagram from our landscape that's started to talk about how do we make those courtyard spaces really nice, so you can start to see where we're going to have shade areas and trees in that central courtyard, and try and create shaded patio areas back here on the front, creating a nice entryway and some seating areas so that you can kind of congregate in the front. Maybe you're waiting for your parent to pick you up, and there's a nice shaded area for you to sit out there, and I'll show some images of that the next couple of slides. This starts to show a little bit more detail on the floor plan. So the front entry is going to be also this yellow box. So that yellow box is the library and media center. That's where that front entry comes in. That's that glassy box I was talking about. It still creates a secure entry vestibule to the admin suite. So green is admin. So admin's still right off the front. You still walk through reception and have to get checked in before you have access to the whole campus. The additional science labs that we're creating are along the north side of the main hallway. Something that was interesting that the campus brought up is wanting to display art and projects that students are working on. So we're going to be creating a gallery space in the middle of this hallway, so it kind of opens up right next to the art classrooms and maker spaces, and they can display student work there so that everyone can kind of see what's going on at Miller, and it's not just hidden behind walls and classrooms, it's on display for everyone. And then at the bottom here, we have the performing arts edition. So that's going to include choir and ensemble spaces, as well as additional storage for band and practice rooms for all of those. And then again, athletics. What we're proposing for athletics is a renovation to the locker room area, new dance facility, the renovated dance facility, weight room, and training room, and then a gym that would be added here at the south end with a separate entry, so athletics would have a new entry as part of that work. If you go upstairs for the second level, of the addition, that's where we're adding these elective classrooms. Counselor space at the end, so it's a little bit more private. And then an upstairs library space. So students will be able to stand up here, have small groups, and then look down into that first floor of that library space. And so everyone wants to know, well, what does that look like? So this has been kind of an evolving design from feedback from the campus. What we want to do is create a really glassy central area, so that's that media center and entryway. And then to the left here, we're showing where that performing arts addition would be, back over here. And then to the right is where the administration offices and the elective classrooms would be. So we're trying to tie into some of the materials that the campus has right now, thinking about interesting ways that you could use CMU or metal panel that ties into some of the tones that are on Miller right now, but kind of elevates it and does it in a different way.
Can you go back one slide?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, one more.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the cafeteria in this?
So cafeteria is this darker gray.
Okay, so out of scope means we're not doing anything to it.
The only thing in the cafeteria is some stage renovations, so upgrading the lighting and sound.
Okay, I thought maybe it was not.
Not
being
covered
used
under.
anymore. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Thank you.
And so is the dance, weight room, training area, that's in one of the current gyms?
Correct. So if you look, that's correct. That's the large gym currently.
So
it'd
then you
be-
added the new large gym down at the bottom.
Yes, if you add the new large gym, then you can use that space to renovate for those other programs.
I think there's a lot of advantages to being able, it's a large space. The spaces that we're putting in there need a little higher volume. And so what we're able to do is kind of reuse some of that and give you a separate entrance to your gym facility. So now you can access both gyms without going through the entire school, Right now you have to walk down the hall, you have to kind of go through the cafeteria. You know, it's like kind of a maze to go, where am I supposed to go to get to that back gym? So we're trying to contain all that into one lobby space. And then because of the additional capacity that we're building to, locker space has really become, they're going, we don't have enough lockers right now. We're built as basically an intermediate school. So we're really trying to bring this up to middle school level from a number of lockers standpoint and the facilities that they have.
But it'll be bid as that whole area is bid as an alternate.
That is correct, yes, sir. And I think there's some things that we're trying to do from the addition, or the new portion. If you remember early discussions, we had multiple additions throughout, and we've really combined all that into one. So we're trying to be a lot more efficient with our costs right now. I think, and by adding it into one place, we're more efficient from a circulation standpoint, less walls, less roof, less exterior walls, those kinds of things. So I think we're able to kind of bring that together and give us an opportunity to look and see if we can afford the alternate.
This is showing some of the material studies we're starting to look at about using maybe a CMU block, but using kind of an interesting pattern, so kind of shifting it back and forth, maybe just by inches to create an interesting texture on this far wall. And and also maybe using that as opportunity to put some branding in for Miller Middle School, so it really says like what this campus is, and it creates a little bit more identity, which is one of the things we talked a lot about during our visioning with the campus administration and the teachers. And then this is showing that front community court, so trying to create a space where you might actually want to sit or gather before school, or maybe at an after school event you want to be out there and wait for someone to come. And we just imagine this being a more active and inviting space, and it kind of creates this idea of an inviting and welcoming campus that we've heard so much about from the campus staff. This is that central courtyard, and you can start to see at Miller how the campus actually has several levels that step down over the over the entire campus. So this would be a tiered courtyard. So this would be coming, if you imagine to your right, if you could look to the right-hand side, you'd be looking at the cafeteria space. So this could start to extend outdoor dining facilities, create some outdoor learning spaces, and then down at the bottom is where we're showing the art classrooms and maker spaces so that they could actually spill out and have project space in that courtyard. So we're trying to make it a really active and exciting space for the students. And then this is an interior shot of the library space, which would also have tiers of step down over the course of the space as you walk through, and then that second level above. So you could see students studying or working up here as well as down in this space, and there would be that relationship between the second level and the first. And then again, having a really open and inviting atmosphere so that you can see what's going on in the courtyard, and there's that back and forth between these spaces.
Are we having ramps with handicap?
Yes, there will be ramps that will all be ADA accessible throughout the whole project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. And then the narratives I have in those printed books, it's basically just going over preliminary systems for structural, mechanical systems. Those will be developed, obviously, as we get further into the documentation.
It's a best guess at this point as we start to dive into the design. So it kind of helps with that pricing so they understand the system.
Any other questions on those?
Questions, anybody? We can move on to the security fencing at San Marcos High School.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Jay Weston, Director of Facilities for the district. As we began talking about renovating and adding on to the high school facility, we also began to look at the safety ways to make our students a little more secure here at this campus. So I believe you've got it in your board book, but this is, do what? Page 56 of the board book, there's a plan that shows, and I know for the audience, you probably can't see this very well, but there is some fencing on this, what we talked about doing, and we just wanted to show you all this tonight and tell you kind of where we were on it. We plan on building a fence back all the way out the west side of the campus, toward the road, toward that old Bastrop or whatever. I'm not sure what road that is, but anyway, we were going to build a fence to secure back down this way where it was the bus loop, and also put a sliding gate there where the yellow circle is, to a sliding mechanical or electric gate, and then fence back all the way back to the baseball stadium, and then on the other side come out by the original building gyms and come out and encompass the and go to the SAC, and also put a sliding gate out there, and of course we'd cross one road there behind the baseball stadium, and that would be swinging gates. And this would be an ornamental fence that would be a commercial grade ornamental fence, similar to what is back behind the high school right now. It would keep our students enclosed in the campus, and of course with this new construction out here, it would also help. They may need some more places to go out there, but it would help keep them inside the area of the campus. We do have some pricing on this. It came in at about close to $55,000, which it's over our $50,000 limit. So we would either have to go out, do a request for pricing, or we will, if we can find somebody that's on one of our purchasing co-ops, Buy Board or TexMOS or one of those, then we make him get pricing from them and do it that way. But we just want to kind of show you what our plans were to do, and if you have any questions about that.
Questions, anybody?
So it'll come back to us,
Yes, this will come back to you.
item for action, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Right now, we're just getting information on it. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
We'll move on to quarterly investment report.
I'm going to go ahead and do the quarterly and the annual investment report together, if that's okay. Starting on page 61 of your packet, you will find the quarterly investment report. And I know it says quarterly, but there's actually 4 months in there because of the way we ended our school year. So it's a little bit more than a quarter. So when you look at those amounts, it looks really, really good, but that's because there's an additional 30 days in there. So, and then annually also is a 10-month, so it's a little short, but we still did very good for the 17-18 school year. So just to recap for our three major funds, the general fund for the extended quarter was $348,406, and for the year we earned $635,463. For our debt service fund, we earned for the extended quarter was $94,982, and for the year $138,638. And for our construction fund, we earned $265,029 for the extended quarter and $1,089,000 for the year, which will help in these additional construction projects. If the board has any questions.
Questions, anyone? No questions.
Okay, we'll move on to the concession stands. I just wanted to kind of give the board an update on where the district was in regards to concession stands. When the stadium was built back in, I believe, 2015, the intent of concession was so that we could run that where our student and booster clubs could earn money for their organizations to help benefit the students of our school district. We were lucky enough that we had the football booster club, and we had a gentleman that was running that for the booster clubs, for the football booster clubs. We have now been informed that because his son has graduated from the high school, he can no longer work for the booster club and help with that. Anyway, we were informed by the booster club that they were going to be unable to do the concessions for the students. So the district had to take a look and say, okay, what are we going to do to continue concessions at the stadium? So one of the things that we looked at is we could do an RFP and go out and get requests for proposals for that for somebody else to run it for us. Or we can take it in-house and we can do it as an enterprise fund, and that way we can still utilize our booster clubs and still be able to give back to those booster clubs. So at this point in time, the district is looking at taking that in-house and doing it by running an enterprise fund. So it basically, an enterprise fund would be like a student activity or something that's held on the side, and it's for profit making. And so what we would do is, I know this is going to be the first year, so we would hire a manager to help manage that so we could build a program, and that way we can still give back to our students and help get the help from the booster clubs and the student organizations to give back to our students and continually enhance what we have for our students in the athletics. So just wanted to keep the board abreast, and if you have any questions in regards to concessions.
President Cantu.
Mr. McLaughlin?
First of all, I think that the first 2 years that we were in the stadium, we had a third party that we put out an RFP, and there was a company that handled concessions, correct?
Actually, we did it for the first year that we opened, because we only did it for, remember, we opened up mid-year, so we had a company that came in to help run it for, I think, 2 or 3 games.
And they paid us.
They gave us a portion. I think they kept either 70 or 80% of the profit and gave the district the other 10 to 20.
Okay, and so that was just the first season?
Yes.
And then the last 2 seasons, we've had 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 2 seasons, the football boosters have handled it.
Correct.
And then how much has the district seen back from that?
The district does not see any money back from that. That has been run by the booster clubs, and the money has been split between the different booster clubs for the kids.
I think it all went to football, right?
To my understanding, that each organization would run, like I believe Diamond Line ran one, the football booster, band had one, so they would get a portion of the profits.
You mean they ran
The parents.
a table out there that they sold their stuff?
No, they actually ran the concession. I believe there's 3 concession stands out there.
Different places. Food items.
I see. So, okay, well, that doesn't conform with what I understood, so I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. So you said, which ones? I'm sorry, which were the ones that ran the concession stand?
I believe it was Booster, Diamond Line, and Cheer, and Band.
Band? Yeah.
Booster, Diamond Line, Cheer, and Band. So, all right, and so the district, I guess, took a bit of a loss from what we were being paid when there was a third-party concessionaire, and instead that money was split among those 4 booster clubs?
Mm-hmm.
And what did it go for? Like, what were those funds used for?
They would go back to the booster club, and so I believe the booster club, the football booster, was using it to give scholarships at the end, and then also pay for the different things that the organizations in the beginning of the year. Booster clubs will have meetings to talk about what they're going to do as a committee for the kids, and then but I know that the booster club for the football gave out scholarships, and they did some other things that I don't know exactly what for the past 2 years.
Statue, or some sort of statue, I remember, from like a year ago that they were going to donate. Does anybody remember that?
I remember
seen
that.
it.
Football did.
Football, yeah.
Do we have a hard copy of this presentation, Mrs. Griffith, or is this just
I did
all
not,
audio?
yes. I was just going to inform the board. I did not have, I can put together one for you and send it out to the board.
Well, sometimes when we get informational presentations later, I hear that, we were supportive of something. I'm real concerned about this, actually. I don't think we know anything about running concessions, and we're an educational institution, so I don't know that, it seems like that might be more, that might bring up more problems than it brings solutions. And I don't know, can we find out when this comes back to us what similarly situated attendance bases have received from third-party concessionaires via an RFP, so we know what kind of money is out there before we make the decision?
Mrs. Cantu.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you. I guess my first question is, what is the prohibition of the individual running the concession stands doing it because his son has graduated? Is it board policy? Is it the Football Booster Club's constitution that is stopping them? What?
Yes, it's the football booster club.
So the booster
Constitution.
club can't amend their constitution to allow this individual to do it? I think, we're going from a booster club with a constitution saying we're not allowing him to do it, take it to the board, put out an RFP, and it seems like a really big step when really it's just like if the booster club has been doing it, then allow him to do it. I have my own theories about why we're having this conversation, but with no information in front of me, I can only just assume. And so that's my first question, is why can't the booster club just amend their constitution to allow this individual to do that? And then again, my second one is this just for the football stadium, or is this for concessions district-wide?
For this year, we were just going to do it for the football, or the stadium, so that we can see how things ran and get more information, and then maybe expand on it as we go.
As an individual trustee, I'm just going to say it right now, I would not be in favor or vote for and would actively work against taking all concessions away from all other booster clubs. I mean, as someone who's seen parents volunteering at concession stands, I mean, if y'all want to have that conversation with the volleyball parents and the soccer parents and the cross-country parents about, hey, what little money you do make at concession stands outside of the game is no longer yours. If this is an issue at just Rattler Stadium, then I'm willing to have that conversation. But again, I'm extremely hesitant about saying we're going to take away district-wide concessions, bring it in-house, or take it to some third-party vendor, when I think other booster clubs are running their concessions adequately at this time. Even if only the first year was for the football stadium, and maybe a conversation down the road about other concessions. But again, I think we're creating a problem, looking for a solution, and I don't understand why we're even having this conversation, but.
I believe that when we were looking at it for district-wide, it's not to take it away from any of the different boosters. It's to make sure that all student organizations are represented and all have a chance to earn some money. And the reason why we're here is because they brought it back to the district. And so ultimately the district is responsible for running those concession stands. So we have to make a determination and make sure that we have concessions for our parents and students come the first Friday night football game, or even JV.
So under this RFP for concessions for the entire district, how would you divide up that money that is generated equally between organizations of various sizes, or, you know, female athletics, male athletics, you know, the cross country has X number of participants, Diamond Line has this, volleyball has that. I guess that's where all of my questions are, is what does the system look like, rather than saying, we're going to go out for an RFP on something that we kind of think we have an idea about what we want to do, but we really don't know what that looks like yet, but we're doing this for all kids. And again, without any information in front of me, it's difficult to have this conversation. But again, I look forward to information in the future about this, but I think, at least in my experiences going to volleyball games, going to soccer games, going to cross-country meets, it seems like concessions are taken care of. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
We have had some issues with concessions this year with the city and with permitting that you, as a trustee, wouldn't see that we deal with. So, and then plus we also have the issue of how much money is being generated that creates the need to actually follow the law to make sure that we do everything right. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I think everything's to benefit the kids, but when we have over $50,000 made at the football stadium, it creates a trigger that we have to respond to. And so, you know, the intent is always for the money to benefit the students. That's what the money is for, and that's why we're trying to look at systems to put in place so that we can better have a handle on it, because I too go to the games and I see parents running, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, we're responsible for taxpayer money. We don't know where that money's going to right now, so we're trying to get a handle on all those things, like we did with credit checks and we did with all the other things. It's kind of sometimes when people assume certain things are happening, as we heard earlier today, like not the truth. We're just trying to figure out what the truth, and respect the people that we know have been working hard to make it run smoothly. So we're trying to find a win-win. We had a good meeting with the former person that was a former Booster Club member who was part of the meeting. So I think he has a really good idea of where we're trying to head, and I think he's supportive because I think it helps ultimately the student.
But if you took in $50,000 and then you hire a manager and pay him a bunch of that, you know, that's a net loss, you know, because you've had money that was coming in and going straight towards student needs, and because it was going straight towards student needs, it drove volunteers. I think when it becomes more unclear as to exactly where the money goes and whatever, I shouldn't say we, my wife worked them more than I, but soccer concessions for 4 years, it is awful.
It's cold.
And we'd sell like 2 bags of chips or something, unless Alamo Heights was in or something. And
chocolate.
Yeah, some hot chocolate on occasion, but you had to have 2 people back there the whole time, and the haul for the whole night would be, you know, almost nothing. But we did it because it went back to the soccer program and it helped. And if I didn't know, you know, we were the volunteer base, and if I didn't know very clearly where that money was headed and that it was going directly to the sports that our kids were involved in, I probably wouldn't have been up there, you know, during the JV games, or I would have been up there less often, I would think.
Ms. Hanson?
Ms. Castillo is before me.
Oh, Ms. Castillo?
Well, I think in this, years ago when we were talking about the bond that built that stadium, I think the discussion was also that by having that stadium, the boosters could benefit from possibly running. Well, we found out from that first year that that was not going to be the case. We contracted with a vendor from San Antonio, and it just didn't work out. And then when the boosters volunteered through their a main person to run it, I think it's when we started seeing, and the issue that has come up that I've heard from some of the other boosters, Mr. McLaughlin, is that with now that the city has implemented these guidelines regarding health issues, I mean, not issues, but requirements and everything. I've heard last year, you know, they shut down, they come out here, they know what's going on, they came out here to a basketball game and they shut it down because they didn't have the cards, or they couldn't they didn't have anything to show that they were meeting the guidelines that they were supposed to meet. And so I think that if I asked when I saw the item, I asked Ms. Griffin, and this concerns me. I mean, if we're going to be running it, hopefully maybe we can set up a good system, because it's not just talking about booster organizations, making sure that we're covered also where we need to be by people that are handling food items. Years ago, I was a band booster for many, many years. We were out there always selling, but it's not the same anymore like it used to be, and we wanted to make sure we were acquiring money for our organization to supplement the band organization, and that's how we were able to, maybe if the band director needed an item or whatever, we had the money that we generated the money hopefully to supplement that. So I want us to make sure, from my perspective, that if we're going to retain it, we're going to run it, and if we have to hire, she mentioned hiring a manager to help with that, at some point in time, what are we going to do? We're going to go out and do an RFP for a vendor, because my understanding, is that not correct, that if we're making $50,000 or more, we have to do an RFP, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is correct.
And if we're going to be doing that,
And that's all. So we're just talking football, but that does include middle school
Right.
event money. But like, we don't know what money's soccer, the 2 hot chocolate cups that you sold.
$25 or something.
Yeah, so, but all that adds to the total, so, you know, I just didn't want it to get out there, like, we're trying to benefit the kids, but we're trying to put a good system, and we do recognize the people that have worked for the last 2 years hard, because you see them running around all over the place, and it's usually the same person, you know, or there's 2 of them running around trying to coordinate, so we're just trying to get a system around.
And I think the point of bringing it back in-house was to make sure that you didn't have, when you have change in booster clubs from one to
Yeah.
another, it's
Yeah.
not, it's going to be a district thing, so that we can make sure that it's going to be taken care of and managed, and that the students are going to benefit, and that we're not sitting here every year deciding, okay, well, is the person taking over going to be able to manage it or not be able to manage it? So we're just trying to put a hand in that. That's why it's going to be an enterprise fund. It's not going to be run through the general fund. It will be an enterprise fund, so it'll stand on its own. But at this point in time, we're trying to see how we can benefit, you know, the students, and make sure that this is being taken care of correctly.
So, Mrs. Griffith, do we have the data from when the city has come out and shut down a booster club or issued a citation to an organization? I know it's been anecdotally referenced, but I would like to see that information.
They don't
if
tell
it's
us.
An ongoing thing.
I'd
the
like to
booster club.
discuss it in that upcoming city district meeting. I mean, we didn't ask for that. They have real things they can do, like make sure power's on in half the city and all the things the city's responsible for. Worrying about us handing out bags of chips for $1 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ms. Hanson?
We
you've
agree.
had- Ms. Hanson?
2 things. So my understanding is football booster gave it back and said, we don't have anybody that can step up and do this.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that. And I'm very much in favor of the enterprise fund and taking it in-house rather than giving it to somebody else to make money off of and making sure it goes back to the booster clubs that participate.
Mhm.
Thank you.
My question is, if we do have the enterprise fund, it would still be up to the Booster Club to decide how they spend it, right?
Correct.
Anyone else?
Let me add my two
Miss-
cents.
That choice.
Can't you? I'm sorry.
Ms. Viapando?
I just want to say that, I mean, we've already discussed it enough, I think. But Mr. Cardona offered systems and accountability, and we need to let him take care of this. And of course, Karen, you and I am also in favor of the enterprise fund to handle it, because that way it allows the booster clubs to have a part of it too. And definitely all the parents, because I think a lot of the, like Mr. McLaughlin said, it's the parents that have to work. So I think I'm ready
To move on?
to move on and have
Mrs.
Mr.
Cantu,
Cardona.
before we
Mr.
move
Evans.
on,
Oh,
so what is the system that we're putting in place here so we're bringing it in-house, but what does that look like? Our food service department's gonna do it, or?
We would hire a manager. The good thing that we were hoping for is that, because we have bulk pricing and we have great values through our food system, that we would be able to tap into that pricing so that it would help as far as revenues in that enterprise fund.
So what does the manager manage? So they do all concessions,
Right, at this point in time, they're just gonna do,
is it a paid employee of the school district? Again, I don't have any information in front of me, that's why I'm asking these
I'm
questions.
still putting that together, so I was hoping to have more information to you before tonight's meeting. We're still gathering that and getting information from other school districts that are doing it this way, and so
So it would just be an SMCISD employee, benefits eligible based on hours?
we were looking at that. We're trying to determine, some districts do it a different way. Some of them make them an employee, some of them make them as a consultant, and but they work for the district, and we have an agreement with them.
So is he gonna come back to us, or y'all are just handling this administratively?
I mean, of course, we want to be transparent, and we want to bring it back to the board to let the board know what we're doing and how we're handling things. So that's,
I like that.
So
There's only one more meeting before the first game, though.
well, we do have another agenda prep, so I could bring you more information on agenda prep.
So the only money leaving the school district when it's brought in-house and this enterprise fund is created is the salary for the manager?
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? We can move on. Thank you. Item 7, approval of consent agenda items.
I'd like to pull 7B.
7-1?
B, I think, are we handling that in closed session, or?
No, we
We're
don't need
not.
to go into closed session for it.
It's not a position of interest.
Not
Oh.
administrative.
Just bringing
Okay, well, hold on.
Is the person here that we could see them?
Is this I'm confused. Okay, well, I still like to pull it just so we can discuss it, because right now it's in consent.
So,
We can't go into closed session even though it's listed under B?
yeah,
We didn't have it listed in closed session, but we
It
could.
is.
it isn't, it's under personnel.
Personnel action.
We
So
could.
can't we go into closed session?
We could.
Can we go now?
We might as well do them both
Can
at
we-
once, because
Oh, you're wanting
we have
to-
that closed session at 9. I just was pulling it from consent, but yeah, we can do that. We could do that. That would make more sense, I think.
You want to bring it down to do with the 9?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
To just move it down to when we
That's
go
fine.
down
I
to
was
the
just
other.
saying.
Okay,
it's
so then
listed.
approval of minutes for regular scheduled board meeting on June 18th.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Do I hear a
I
second?
second.
Ms. Costilla seconds. All in favor? Did you vote?
I abstain because I was not at one of those.
Okay. So it's 5
Or one
and 1,
abstention.
1 abstention.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can move into items for action. Consideration approval of a plan of finance for the construction and equipment of school buildings and directing district administration and consultants to proceed with the issuance of unlimited tax school building bonds.
Yes, we have our bond counsel and our financial advisors with us tonight that will go over the second sale of the 2016 bond.
President, board members, and staff. For the record, Robert Tijirino de Estrada Hinojosa. And also with me this evening is Mr. Juan Aguilera. Oh, there he is. Bond counsel for the school district. Again, as Karen stated, we're here to present the plan of finance and limited tax school building bonds, Series 2018. It is the remaining amount, $57.3 million. This all started out, just a quick summary, this all started out last year when we sold $50 million on July the 30th. The interest rate was 3.4%, and we closed the financing on August the 30th. The school district received that $50 million. So if you turn to the next page, back when the school district had the bond election, the goal was to sell the $107.3 million and not increase the tax rate. The tax rate currently, interest and sinking fund tax rate, if you notice on column K, row 11, 12, and 13, is 0.3541 cents. This tax rate has remained the same since 2014, fiscal year ending 2014. So the goal, if everything stays as is, we will sell the bonds next month, and we will be able to maintain that tax rate of 0.3541 cents. Now, two things have been really vital and important for the school district. The staff and the board have done a great job on doing strategic financing, cash defeasance. I think about $7 million has been defeased over the last few years to keep that tax rate down. Again, the goal of not increasing the tax rate, selling the full amount of $107.3 million will be met, but the other key factor here is on column B, the property values have increased over the last few years from $4.4 billion last year to $4.8 billion on column B, row 12, to $5.5 billion we're estimating for next fiscal year. Now that value for fiscal year ending 2019 won't be final until probably next week, sometime midweek, July the 25th or so. So I believe Karen is stated or mentioned to me before that that amount is probably going to be larger than $5.5 billion. So instead of the tax rate, again in 2020, the board had also talked about giving a tax break back to the community. So for this coming fiscal year 2019, the tax rate's going to stay the same, but if the property values continue to grow, if you notice on row 14, column K, the district, if everything goes as planned, the district will lower the tax rate from 0.3541 cents to 0.3124. So almost 4.2 pennies are given back to the community. Again, this is all two things, property values going up, cash defeasance that the board and the staff have worked together to do over the years. So if you notice on column E, we're selling the balance, $57.3 million, going out 25 years, which we did last year. The estimated interest rate, true interest rate cost is 3.87%, and I'm on row 3, column E. And again, we have the principal and interest stated on column E from row 14 to row 37. Property values, again, on column B, but the tax rate on column K staying the same as it's been since 2014, 0.3541 cents. Next year, a year from now, the board can consider giving a tax rate decrease to the community of roughly 4 cents next year. But again, the goal of the board when we had the bond election is not increase the tax rate when you sell the whole bonds, and right now everything goes as planned. We'll be able to meet that goal. If you turn to the next page, we have the financing team. We have the issuer, Sam Marcus, CISD, financial advisor, bond counsel. The underwriters is Frost Bank. They will be the senior underwriter. They were senior last year, and there's going to be 5 co-managers, First Tennessee, Hutchinson, Shockey Early, Raymond James, Siebert, Cisneros and Shank, and Wells Nelson. Underwriters Council will remain the same from last year, Winstead PC. The rating agency will go out to Moody's. Bond insurance, if this item is approved, we'll apply for PSF, Permanent School Fund Bond Insurance, tomorrow. Paying agent will be Bank of New York. The next page is the timetable. If this item again is approved today, we'll have a rating agency and due diligence conference call on August the 6th. We'll receive the PSF letter about August the 21st, receive the bond rating on August the 22nd. We'll price the bonds August the 23rd and sign the bond purchase agreement. And the district will receive the funds, roughly $57.3 million, on September the 20th, 2018. I know that's a lot of information, but I'll turn it over now to Juan unless board members or staff have any questions. Mr. Aguilera?
Thank you. My name is Juan Aguilera with the firm of Escamilla and Ponick, and we service the district's bond attorneys. And as Mr. Tijerina was mentioning, this is the second tranche or the second sale from the bond election that the district had in 2017, November of 2017, for $107,300,000. I have prepared, just like we did, it's the same thing that we did last year, right about this time, except that now we're looking the only thing different really is that we're looking at a little bit a larger number, which is last time around we were here for 50 million. The balance, and I mean what the voters authorized is 107, so obviously it's $57.3 million that is left from what the voters approved at that November election. So that's what we have in place. Like we did last time, the state law allows the school district to be able to approve a parameters order, just like we did last time. The parameters order, you're setting parameters of certain parameters. For example, the amount of the bonds cannot be more than $57.3 million. The Attorney General's office would not allow us to go more than that because that's what the voters approved. And that the other thing is that this parameters order provides for the board president, superintendent of schools, and Ms. Griffith as the business manager to sign an approval certificate to finalize the terms of the bonds. So what we have today is a parameters. Then the parameters is good, just like we did last year, for 1 year. We do not have at this point, and as Mr. Tijerina pointed out, on August the 23rd, I believe, and that's tentative. That's when it is that the bonds will be priced, and at that time we will have, Mr. Tijerina will have interest rates, maturities, and so forth as to how much the actual bond package is going to cost. He will discuss this with staff, and then at that time, he'll make a recommendation, and if the district wants to move forward, then by signing an approval certificate, then we finalize the terms of the bonds. This parameters order, according to what state law requires, is good for 1 year. And so if after 1 year, for whatever reason, we don't sell bonds, then we would have to come back to you again and again request that you adopt another parameters order. But again, keep in mind, $57.3 million is the amount, the maximum amount that you could be able to issue. And then again, that's what the voters approved. So, Madam President, by an order to adopt a motion to adopt the order as presented in a second would be needed.
Ready for a motion? Ms. Hanson?
I move that we adopt the order. What was the rest of it?
Authorize an order to issue bonds in an amount not to exceed $57.3 million.
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ms. Villalpando seconds. Any further questions or discussions? All in favor? 6. None opposed. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And like we did last time, we have a lot of signatures, so I'll leave this behind with George Ann.
Thank you.
Ms. Contin, this might be
Ms. Castillo.
not towards Mr. Aguilera, but this might be preliminary. But when Mr. Hedina was here, no, he mentioned that maybe next year we could decrease by 4 cents. I'm just, like I said, it might be preliminary, given our approaching our maybe possible Chapter 41 status. I just want to make sure that maybe we really seriously
That we think about it.
Yeah.
That we kind of consider the
Right.
ups and downs.
I mean,
on
I
it.
think that anybody, I would welcome a 4
Absolutely.
cents decrease.
You're right.
But I think that when we come to that, I think we need to talk about that for sure.
Yes.
No, that's fine. Mr. Tejeda, thank you.
One thing to
Thank you.
keep in mind with Chapter 41 schools that Robert and I represent, not very many, but some school districts are Chapter 41, that if you do have to go into a recapture, you keep 100% of the INS taxes that are collected here locally. So I know that one school district we did in South Texas, they had a lot of maintenance and operation taxes, and because of recapture, I think they were paying something like 80 cents to the state. They moved everything, had an election so they could move it over to the INS side so that every penny that was collected locally could be used for payment of the bonds instead of having to go on. But these are discussions that we're happy to come back at any time
And have
and discuss and
workshop on
as
it.
to what it is that's best for the district.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Approval of schematic design for Miller Middle School renovation.
I'll make a motion to approve the schematic design for Miller Middle School renovation as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. McLaughlin makes the motion and Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any discussion? Questions?
Looks good.
All in favor? 6, none opposed. Consider approval of budget amendments.
I have a question on this.
Okay.
Did we already receive a bid and award a contract for central office renovations? Was maybe that was the meeting I missed or something? I don't recall that.
For Central?
Yes.
Yes, remember you were here and we had the,
We hired someone?
oh, on the, as far as this, we're including it into the renovations, so we're doing the CMAR. So we're doing an increased scope since we're already gonna be touching Mendez. We're increasing the scope because you can, by law, have a change order up to 25%. So in order to save money, and so we won't have that additional overhead, we were gonna do this CMAR.
I mean, I know what the bottom money is, and I remember the CDC vote, but I didn't remember, because we set this price as kind of a ceiling, you know, of what we would be willing to spend on central office, and my hope was we would end up spending less than that maybe, and then additionally, I also didn't want to authorize the expenditure of the money until I heard back about the hydrology study at that site.
And he brought that back to you, I believe back in February. Is he still here?
Is he here?
You walked out.
They left?
I
Oh.
heard it.
Heard you ask that
Yeah, I knew his hydrology was coming up again. I still have questions about it. No, he brought me back like an interim update. Like, well, we looked at it, and it looks like it's going to be okay, but then I was expecting something more formal.
Okay, do you want me to have him bring that back?
I don't know. I'm just not ready to vote to authorize the funds until,
He's coming back. They're bringing him back.
oh,
Ask him.
Mr. Aresti. On the central office, I thought we were doing a
You just
study
thought-
of the hydrology there, and I know we've talked about it a number of times, and so even I'm confused as to where this stands. Well, actually, even it's not that hard. I'm usually one of the first people confused about things over time, but you told me, I remember an interim status update that you thought it was going to be okay, but I was expecting something more formal. You know, that yes, all clear, we have determined the source of water was X, we have we know it will cause no trouble because we're taking these steps. Did you?
So, not last month, the month before last, what we've done is, Jay's been under there. They're 90% sure it's rainwater. After doing some further, and I had some pictures last time to show.
I remember those.
All those, so basically, all your ventilation is facing up, right? So rain's coming in, your water's not able to seep away from your slab. And so because it's a suspended slab, the water's going down, it's finding its easiest route, and it's going right under the grade beams underneath the building. And so what's happened over time is because it's that soil again that likes to move and heave, and it looks like the courtyard, right? It's like high spots, low spots, so the water can't drain properly. And so what we talked about was doing was an alternate onto the project that would tie in all the rain, the downspouts. We're going to tie all those into a pipe, and we're going to take them to a detention pond. That's step one. Step two is going to be, we're going to have to get underneath and regrade all of, once we stop the water, we can regrade, so then that way we're able to, any water that actually does get under there still will go to a centralized drain, and it will drain out to a detention pond as well.
Okay, so following up on that, you said, I think you said they're 90% sure it's rainwater. Who's they?
Your maintenance guys.
Our maintenance?
Yes.
So we didn't have an independent person look at the hydrology there. Jay and the
Right.
crew just, they looked
Well,
at
we had our civil engineers, our mechanical, electrical engineers, and also the structural engineers all taking a look. And I mean, from their experience, it appears to be stormwater. We were double checking because you used to have a ground source heat pump system. And so they had tubes going in underneath there and made sure that those were capped to make sure that that's not a part of the problem. And it doesn't appear that's the problem. It appears to be the rainwater.
And how can you get to a higher level of certainty than 90% sure? Because I feel like prior boards were 95% sure our pre-K wasn't
Right.
going to flood, yet it did. I want to make 100% sure.
Right. And that's something, I mean, you're in an existing condition here. You're not flooding your campuses. Your campus is not flooding. You're having rainwater seep underneath your building. The campus doesn't flood. The floors don't flood. It's underneath the building, and we're able to detain that. Once we're able to stop the water from seeping in under the building, it should solve the problem. And that's where that 10% is. I mean, unless you're wanting to spend $80,000 to $90,000 on a report, I think this is the best step at this point in time. We can fix this. We're pretty sure I mean, my civil engineer has seen this multiple times. It appears to be all from rain.
Okay.
And we'll be able to tell. I mean, once we tie in all of our downspouts, once we have to re-roof that area and tie the downspouts in, we'll be able to tell a noticeable difference.
Okay. All right, and Ms. Griffith, can you explain to me again, you said, did we vote to go the CM at risk route already? Have we already done that?
That part you didn't vote.
Okay.
But we were trying to do what was at the best value for the district, and by tying it into the existing contract, we're able to save a lot of money for the district. But if you would like for us to bring it back so you can vote on it?
Whomever our CM at risk is at other facilities is going to take on this middle
Yes.
school project at the same time?
Yes.
And are they paid like a percent of the total project? Refresh my memory how they're
CMA, you're paying them for general conditions. So the general conditions has already been bid, it's already been set. So,
It's not like a cost plus.
right,
It's just a flat fee.
correct.
So they had this flat fee for doing the other projects, and they're going to do this one at no additional flat fee?
There'll be some, yeah, our general conditions are not. So that means the cost of work that they have to come to do the construction at that site, no, that will not increase. The general conditions are already set.
Okay.
They will get cost of the project because they will have to pay their workers and stuff, so that they just won't get the overhead.
I see. And how do we know that if we approve and say, hey, okay, here you go spend $4.5 million, how do we know we're not paying them $4.5 million for something they could get done in a competitive environment at like $4.2 million? How do we control for that?
Because we see the bids.
We see their sub bids,
We see everything.
so they don't accomplish any work themselves in-house. They bid out all of the subcomponents.
And we see all bids.
You see those and then collectively approve them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They'll come back with 3 bids for each trade. Sorry.
Right.
3 bids. We review every single bid. to make sure that they have the 3. If not, then by law, they have to go out and they have to rebid that portion of work.
Okay.
So it still stays competitive.
So the 4.508, that's just a number. I mean, we might spend
all
less
approved.
than that. We just can't spend more than that.
Correct. That's the amount that you collectively as a board gave. I believe it was like 5 million and something, and you asked us to cut a portion, and you said that will not, and so we took that off, and that was the amount. It was a little bit more than this, but we've already spent 49,000 of that, so that's why that number isn't in
It's a
here.
weird number.
Yes,
Okay. All right.
that's
I
the
don't have
rollover balance.
questions.
Ready for a motion? Ms. Hanson,
I move that we approve the budget amendments as listed.
do I hear a
Second.
second? Mr. Arredondo seconds.
I had a question though, Ms. Cantu,
Question?
now that there's a motion in a second. On the central administration amount, Mrs. Griffith or Coleman or Mr. Cardona, does that include, you said the alternate is in there as well for the central administration side? I know we talked about improving the field and doing some other things, and I think at a previous meeting, Mr. McLaughlin asked that that be in as an alternate. does
Right, we
this
haven't
motion
bid
satisfy-
this, we haven't got the cost for this, so it'll go in as an alternate, so once we get pricing, so this is the budget, that number, this is the budget number that the board has given, authorized us. So once we go out and we get all the numbers and they get our guaranteed maximum price, we will have to bring that to you for approval.
Okay.
So we'll have to bring the pricing all back to you. And so we've added stuff as alternate to see what it would come in as and if we can afford it, if we can or can't, or if the board wants to do it anyway.
Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to clarify that approving this tonight doesn't bind us to the alternate, not the alternate.
No,
or
this is
any-
all you're approving tonight is the budget.
Thank you.
Okay. You ready for the vote? All in favor? 6, none opposed. I've been asked if we can take a quick break here, about 5-minute break.
And can somebody turn that on?
Turn that
It's
off,
driving me
yeah.
crazy.
Who has that on? Karen? Who has that on? 804, according to that, but it's really 802. 802. 802, right. We're ready to reconvene.
Item D.
If we start,
Item D, discussion and possible action related to former Central Administration Building located at 501 South LBJ Drive, excluding the former Bonham facility. Mr. Redondo, you put this on the agenda?
Yes, Ms. Cantu, and for those who I'm assuming are here tonight to listen to this conversation. So I brought this up during our agenda preparation meeting about a month or so ago. So I pulled up an article just with a quick Google search. So San Marcos CISD ceased operating inside the former Bonham campus. I believe it was in 2009 when the pre-K moved to Hernandez, and now where it sits at its current site. So since 2009, at least a portion of that block at 501 South LBJ Drive has sat vacant and unused and unkept. And now with us having very substantial conversations about relocating central office to the Mendez site and allocating funds for that tonight, obviously I wanted this board and the administration to have a conversation of, if there's no interest from this dais, at least at this time, to sell the property, what are we going to do to that site? Are we going to wait another 10 years to do anything to it? Because at this current rate, that's kind of the trend, at least for the playground, is to leave it alone and not do anything. And so I'd at least want us to go on the record of saying we're not going to maintain it for the foreseeable future. We're just going to kind of leave it alone for now, or something along those lines. And so, I mean, you can drive by the site right now and you can see that the district, for whatever reason, hasn't really done anything to the playground. So my concern is that the central administration building that is now at that site will be left in the same state of disrepair for the foreseeable future. So.
Okay, we're open to discussion on this. Ms. Villalpando?
I would like to ask Mr. Cardona, what maintenance is being done there? Nothing? I mean,
Just your
the
general-
grounds are pretty well maintained, aren't they?
Kind of
It's
changing the
just-
air filters inside the central office building, cutting the grass, just general maintenance.
But the playground equipment, there's no plans to do
No,
anything
ma'am.
with it.
No, ma'am.
And I don't know that they're so deteriorated that they couldn't be used. I don't know. I'd have to go and inspect them, but.
They are used, but Central is really good about telling the people that, you know, the district doesn't. Well, there are kids out there.
I guess I'm concerned that we're spending $11,000 with, I guess at the time this was prepared, Ms. Griffin, $11,000 roughly annually on the facility without insurance. And then did you get those insurance numbers subsequently?
Yeah. We just break them out. When we get the whole, it comes, they're gonna have to break it down to tell us that.
But it could be it could very easily be another couple grand.
I'm sure it's about 5,000 or 6,000.
So that would be, I know we're basing that on an estimate, but that would be $16,000 we're gonna spend in the next 12 months on that mothballed facility. And we could raise it, it looks like, for $50,000 to $60,000. So if we're gonna leave it, if we're gonna hold on to it for more than a couple years, we should just get rid of it. Because it is just, it's going to deteriorate further. It's costing us money on an annual basis. And there's really no upside to keeping that building there, or the playground. You know, a cleaner site would be less liability and, you know, would be better to me because it wouldn't cost anything. It doesn't cost us anything to maintain, you know, a level field of dirt. So it's not, I mean, I guess it's an action item tonight, but
if we're going to sell it, why not let somebody else pay for removing the building or?
Yeah.
well, that assumes
all
a
that.
very unsophisticated buyer that would not know how much it's gonna cost them to eliminate the building. You know, most developers, I would think, would say, well, this site's worth this much and it's gonna cost me $50,000 to demo it. So I'm gonna take what it's worth minus $50,000 and this is what I'm gonna offer. So I think if that work was already done, you know, they wouldn't subtract that as a cost. I would think. Even setting that aside, it's $15,000 this next year. It doesn't take very long before those costs exceed, in the 4th year, those costs of just mothballing it would exceed what it would cost us to just scrape the site now.
Ms. Hanson?
I would like to demolish it also because it's not a building that somebody can move into. If it was okay, then we'd still be there. And so I would like to demolish it just so that we can cut out all the other costs. And also ask for a current, can't think of the words. Appraisal, thank you. The word left my mind. Just to see where we are on what that value of that property is.
Ms. Costilla?
The cost for the demolition, Karen, does that include demolishing also the portable buildings in the back? Or no? Because you have a cost here like at $40,000.
That's just for the building. If you see
On the other one, it says demo one portable building that is currently attached to the El Centro building.
Yeah, that one would need to come off, but that's, I don't think that's not in here.
So, on the second page, it says demo one portable building.
The quote was,
There's one portable that's attached to a part of El Centro that they don't use at all now anyway.
Yeah.
And it really does need to be demolished. It's tied right in there, and that's
Right.
what we got the price on.
And that's,
We-
that is in the price of the 40?
no.
Yes,
It is?
that is in the price of the 40, yes.
Well, okay, so how much would it cost? You're giving an estimate, this page that you put some questions forth with some answers, Ms. Griffith. What is the cost to demolish the current building and the playground? And you say $50,000 to $60,000, but now you're saying,
$40,000, and if you look at the next one, that's if no ACMU is present. They will not know that unless they go into the building.
We do know there's some ACM present in that portable, and my records show no ACM present in the central office, the old central office. However, when you go to demo, we're going to have to test more material. I have nothing showing what has been tested in that building. So we'll have to test some more material as we go in there.
For the general public, could you say what ACM
I'm sorry, it's
is?
asbestos-containing material.
okay, so my question, the reason I'm asking that question is that when you're talking about demolishing to make it more attractive, I guess, for a buyer, is that what you're
For
saying?
sale, yeah, for sale.
So it doesn't just deteriorating nuisance of a building there. I mean, I don't know that it makes it more attractive for a buyer or not, but I think if we're just gonna let the building deteriorate over time, it would be better to just not have it there. I mean, in hindsight, I bet the neighbors of the Lamar facility would prefer it just be gone because it's sat there for half a decade, and whatnot. And an empty field is a better neighbor. I mean, kids can kick the ball or whatever. It's not.
So if we're going to look at possibly demolishing the building plus getting an appraisal, to me that would be like we're planning on maybe looking at finding a buyer. Why would we want to get it appraised if we're not looking to find a buyer? So I'm just wondering, posing these questions, because I understand that, we don't want that building to go on, but I'm also like was mentioned before, why are we investing money in something that maybe if we're going to leave it alone, why invest it and just let it stay the way it is? I'm not so sure that it's creating any major problems there.
Not
If we were to
today.
leave it alone and not do anything, and maybe at some point in time in future years, maybe we can determine what we want to do with the rest of that property. We do have a 25-year lease to the organization that's at Bonham. So, and my understanding is that that building has 35 feet behind it. So anything beyond that would be something that maybe would be possibly promoted for a buyer to buy. But, why are we going to be investing? Yeah, you say maybe it's better for a buyer to say, well, we're going to deduct $50,000, but I just don't see the building as being a real issue. It's not falling apart, it's not, you know, other than maintaining it, like you say, 11,000 per year to pay, and maybe 16 with the insurance.
Well, I can't bind myself to a future vote, but, and I think Miguel has something, Mr. Arredondo has something as well. I'm sorry, I forgot. You started talking again. Actually, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. I guess just to follow up on this conversation that we've been having. So when I got elected to the board in 2015, some representatives from the church across the street said there was some children who wanted to play at that playground, and was there any interest from the school district at that time to maintain it or make it available? Because I believe if you go by there are no trespassing signs on the fences. And so at that point in time, I talked to then Superintendent Eads, and you know, for those of you who have served and know that administration, I was told at the time, you know, we're taking care of it, we're working on it, we're looking at it. And here we are 3 years later, almost 10 years after we've left that site, at least the playground, and we haven't done anything to it. So I'm hesitant when we say, you know, let's wait a year or two and, you know, see where we are in a few years, because we've done that for the last decade. To put that into perspective, I was still in high school when the school district left the Bonham site. My younger sister was 7 years old and at Crockett Elementary School. She's now about to graduate from San Marcos High School. So she's matriculated through this entire school district, and we have not decided what to do with that playground. So for me, I'd rather just demolish the site as is, because clearly we haven't taken action on it in a decade. And so again, that was the whole impetus of this conversation, is if we're not gonna maintain it, maintain the playground for that neighborhood or for that community, then let's get rid of it. I mean, if it was in, I think, districts 4 or 5, just as much as, you know, people asked about Lamar being taken care of and managed, I think it'd be completely different. But based on the neighborhood that it's in, I can see why it's not as much of an action item on people's radar, and I think that's a little bit embarrassing that we've let that property sit as is for as long as it has been. So tonight, you know, my goal is we either improve the playground and make it available for public use, or we get rid of it. And, you know, I know there's conversations and it plays well in emails about selling the property, and, you know, there's a developer coming to, you know, raise the site and look at purchasing it. I don't know. That might be true. It might not be true. What I do know is the facts of today, which is we have not maintained that site for almost 10 years now. And so I wanted to have that conversation tonight of what we're going to do. Are we going to leave it there for another 10 years? Are we going to wait for a buyer to come tomorrow or in 6 years? And again, it's embarrassing. Like, I'm going to say it as many times as I can. It's embarrassing that previous boards have let that site sit dilapidated for as long as it has been.
But you're speaking more of the playground that's been by itself.
Only the playground.
Only the playground, because they just recently moved out of Central. So you
And
want,
that- and that was-
you're asking for action on the playground.
The playground and the administration building. I mean, when we had offices right next door, when you could look out the window and see that playground, we did nothing. Imagine what we're going to do now that no one is at that site except for Centro.
Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Cardona, is that site big enough for us to build anything on it? Like an
Coleman's
elementary?
not here. I don't know that it's big enough for an elementary. You probably need 15 acres for
Right.
a good-sized elementary.
That's barely 2.
Build a
Right,
good big
that's what
parking
I
lot with
was
it.
thought.
Build an urban
City block,
campus
it's not,
there.
not near big enough for an elementary school.
But I don't know what site, you know, we'd have, if you could sell it for 2.4 and you build on it, that's like you're buying it for 2.4, you know? And we haven't spent much money on dirt in a while. I mean, we had 2 offers for our last facility. We've already talked about putting the next elementary somewhere around Martindale. So I think the odds of the district building on that site, I mean, I don't know what the future
I was
holds.
just asking the question. I didn't think it was, but I'm not the person that's in charge of knowing that information, so that's why I asked the question.
Oh, okay.
Was it possible to be used to build on?
No. You need about 12 acres, and that site is about 2.8 acres, so
Okay.
no.
Well, it depends on what you were building. I mean,
I guess.
right, if you I mean, if you did like an early college campus or something that didn't require as much curtilage around the, you know, multi-story facility, you could do something on it. But I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know why we'd spend $10,000 a year instead of just paying 15 being done with it. I don't think I mean, we don't have an offer. We don't have it up for sale. So we're gonna have it for a while. And that's okay with me. It's an asset that's not depreciating or anything. But if we're gonna have it a while, why do we wanna keep pouring money into it?
Well, and I'm concerned about safety risks, especially on the playground area, of people getting into it. And, I mean, no matter what we have up there, we're still responsible if they get hurt. So, at first I wasn't into demolishing, paying for that, but looking at that site now, and I've been by a couple times, I'm more in favor of us go ahead and demolishing the playground and central office, so we don't have to spend any more money on it.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes.
I know that in our current presentation, Mrs. Griffith, Mr. Cardona, Mr. Wesson, it mentioned something about the removing of the portable. I'm under the assumption that there's a much more robust conversation that needs to go on with the current tenant in that facility in regards to removing the portable. If a motion was made tonight just to demolish the central administration, the former central administration building, and to remove the playground equipment, could the administration be tasked with having those conversations about portables at a later date with the current tenant?
They don't currently use that portable, and it's in really bad condition.
So they're not in it at all?
Not at all.
There's
Those
no,
are
they-
spelled out in the contract separate, those two portables.
So we could vote to remove
But we
that.
still do need to have that conversation with them, and of course we would as we tore that down.
Okay.
Sounds like we're tiptoeing around getting a motion for demolishing.
Then Ms. Cantu, I'm going to make a motion that we authorize the administration to move forward with the demolition of the former central administration facility located at 501 South LBJ Drive and the adjacent property, the playground, and the aforementioned portable attached to the former Bonham campus.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. McLaughlin seconds. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor of demolishing playground and Old Central, raise your hands. 4, 5, opposed? 1. So we will instruct administration to work on that. Consider the trust property. Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion and possible action to establish committee to receive nominations and make recommendation for the renaming of San Marcos CISD property.
Okay, so yes, thank you, Ms. Cantu. So I also agendized this item for tonight, primarily for discussion. I know during our last naming process, there were several names brought forward. There was conversation of current namesakes. So more than anything, just to have the conversation with my colleagues on the dais was to see whether or not there was interest to open this conversation up about renaming current campuses for whatever reason, historical purposes, or maybe those namesakes are not historically appropriate now, given the changes in philosophy and ideology, so on and so forth. So that was the purpose of this agenda item tonight.
Okay, so we're open for discussion on setting up a committee for renaming some of our properties. Ms. Hanson?
If we're gonna rename something that's already has a name, then we as a board have to do our work, and this committee that's not their job, is to go out and see if the community, the campus, the students, the staff want to rename a certain building. That's the board's job. The committee is only job is to pick from the names that they receive. So I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse by establishing a committee. We need to,
First decide if we want to.
right, not put them out there to start taking names for, something we haven't made a decision on as a board to rename.
Any other discussion? So do we want to table this for possible action later? Do we want to meet on this, have a workshop on this? What do we want to do?
I'm fine tabling this. I'll go ahead then, Ms. Cantu, to go ahead and table this item indefinitely.
I'll second.
All in favor? 6-0. Consider trust property bid on cause number 4689, account 11-9315-1100-0500. Zero.
In your packet, we received a bid proposal for a vacant piece of property.
Saw
I
it.
have to bring them.
I know, it's not enough for me.
You want a motion to deny and all second?
Yeah, I'll motion that we deny or decline the bid on cost 4689.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to decline the bid. Any discussion? All in favor?
I'm sorry.
All in favor? Did you vote, Ms. Hanson?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay.
I did.
Can we do the vote
Oh,
again?
we're voting again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1. 1 opposed. Consider approval of agreement for the purchase of attendance credits from the state.
Yes, in your packet, we are Chapter 41 district, so even though we are not in recapture, we have to, as a board, collectively say what we will do in the event that we are in recapture, and so we are asking for the agreement to purchase attendance credits from the state in the event. So that is in your packet for approval.
Mrs. Cantu, I'm going to go ahead and motion that we approve the, I guess, proposed agreement for the purchase of attending credits.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Second by Villapando. Any discussion? Questions? All in favor? 6, 0 opposed. Now we're going to go into closed session to discuss the superintendent summative evaluation
And personnel.
and the personnel action. 9:15.
Ms. Cantu, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the superintendent's evaluation instrument as discussed and updated in executive session.
I'll second.
Second for Mr. McLaughlin. All in favor? 6, opposed, 0.
Need to clean up 7B too, right? We need to approve.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the social emotional learning guidance director,
Second,
April Mustafa.
Ms. Hanson seconds. All in favor? 6, 0. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second for Mr. Arredondo. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's over.